The toothbrush in your bathroom, the fork in your kitchen, and the mirror on your wall all have one thing in common. Someone died making the version your ancestors used. Every object in your house has a hidden history, and most of them are darker, stranger, or more violent than you'd ever expect from something sitting quietly in a drawer or a cabinet. Here are 7 of them. Chapter 1. Your toothbrush was invented from a corpse's ingredients. Ancient Egyptians cleaned their teeth around 5,000 years before Christ using a paste made from crushed ox hooves, burnt eggshells, and pumice. The Egyptians ground the ashes of animal remains into a fine powder and mixed it with water to scrub their teeth every morning. Ancient Greeks and Romans took it further, adding crushed bones and oyster shells to the mix, believing the sharper the abrasive, the cleaner the result. This wasn't a rare practice. For over 4,000 years, brushing your teeth meant rubbing bone ash and eggshell fragments directly onto your enamel. The toothbrush itself wasn't much better for most of history. People used frayed twigs and animal hair bristles pushed into bone or wood handles, and it wasn't until 1780 that an Englishman named William Addis, sitting in prison, carved the first mass-produced toothbrush handle and drilled holes for boar bristles. It wasn't until the 1800s that soap replaced these ancient abrasive pastes, and not until 1945 that soap itself was finally removed from toothpaste for good. Chapter 2. Your fork was once called a tool of the devil. In the year 1004, a Byzantine princess named Maria Argyropoulina arrived in Venice for her wedding, carrying a small case of golden two-pronged forks. She used them at her own wedding feast instead of eating with her hands like everyone else. The Venetians were horrified. When she died of the plague just 2 years later, a cardinal named Peter Damian publicly declared it was God's punishment for her unnatural vanity, insisting that God had already given humans natural forks, their fingers. For the next several centuries, using a fork in most of Christian Europe was seen as an affront to nature itself. And even the word itself carried the stigma. Fork comes from the Latin furca, meaning pitchfork, the same tool associated with devils in religious art. It took the arrival of sticky candied fruit in the 15th century, food too messy to eat with bare hands, before the fork was finally accepted at the dinner table.
Chapter 3. Your mirror used to poison the people who made it. In the 15th century, Venetian craftsmen discovered that coating glass with a mixture of tin and liquid mercury created the clearest reflection anyone had ever seen. The mirrors were stunning, and Venice built an entire economy around the secret formula. But mercury vapor is highly toxic, and the workshops making these mirrors were rarely ventilated. Craftsmen inhaled the fumes daily for years. Historical records suggest the average mirror maker survived only about 10 working years in the trade before the mercury poisoning became fatal. Despite this, demand never slowed. King Louis XIV lined the famous Hall of Mirrors at Versailles with 357 of these mercury mirrors, prized precisely because they were so extravagantly expensive and dangerous to produce. This continued for over 3 centuries, until a German chemist named Justus von Liebig invented a safer silver-based process in 1835, finally ending the era of the deadly mirror. Chapter 4. Your mouthwash sold you a disease that didn't exist. Listerine was invented in the 1870s as a powerful surgical antiseptic, named after Joseph Lister, the British surgeon who pioneered the idea that killing germs during surgery could save lives. For decades afterward, it was marketed as a floor cleaner and a treatment for sweaty feet. Nobody thought to sell it as a breath freshener until the 1920s, when the company's marketing team took an obscure medical term, halitosis, and turned it into a terrifying social disease. Their advertisements convinced an entire generation that ordinary bad breath could silently destroy their marriage and their career. Sales exploded, not because the product changed, but because the fear did. Listerine didn't cure a disease, its marketing team invented one. Chapter 5.
Your breakfast cereal was invented to stop you from feeling desire. In 1894, a doctor named John Harvey Kellogg ran a health sanatorium in Michigan, where he held a strict belief that flavorful food led directly to what he called sinful urges. Kellogg was convinced that bland, dry flake made from corn, specifically designed to be boring to eat, was marketed to his patients as a healthy, anti-arousal breakfast, and genuinely believed he was improving the moral character of anyone who ate it. Kellogg was so committed to this philosophy that his own brother, Will Keith Kellogg, eventually took control of the company and quietly did the one thing John Harvey never intended. He added sugar, made the flakes actually taste good, and built the cereal empire that still sits in your kitchen cabinet today.
Chapter 6. Your matches used to rot people's jaws off. Throughout the 1800s, matches were manufactured using white phosphorus, a chemical that ignited easily but was extremely toxic to the factory workers producing them. Employees who breathed in phosphorus fumes for years developed a condition called phossy jaw, in which the bone tissue in the jaw would slowly die and rot while the worker was still alive, often disfiguring the face permanently and killing many who suffered from it. The disease became such a widespread public health crisis that in 1906 an international conference was held specifically to address it. That conference led most of the world to ban white phosphorus matches entirely. A safer alternative had actually existed since 1844, when Swedish chemist Gustav Erik Pasch patented the red phosphorus safety match, the kind that only ignites against a specific striking surface. It simply took governments over 60 years and thousands of ruined jaws to finally force the switch. Chapter 7. Your high heels were designed for war, not fashion. In the 10th century, Persian cavalry archers wore heeled boots for a very specific military reason. The heel locked their foot into the stirrup, letting them stand up and fire arrows accurately while riding at full gallop. When Persian delegations traveled to Europe centuries later, aristocratic men saw the heels and adopted them not for horseback archery, but purely to appear taller and physically dominant. Height became a symbol of power and virility among European nobility, and heels spent the next several centuries as an exclusively masculine fashion statement. King Louis XIV of France took it further, wearing elevated red heels, and eventually passed a law restricting that specific color to nobility approved by the royal court itself, before the style gradually shifted toward women's fashion entirely. The heel on a modern shoe wasn't born in a fashion house, it was born on a battlefield. 7 objects. 7 hidden histories, and every single one of them is still sitting somewhere in your house right now. If this kind of stuff messes with your head, that's exactly what Curiosquetchy is about. Subscribe if you want more of it, and drop a comment with the next thing you want explained.